First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 1 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter. And I, brethren, could not speak unto you as unto spiritual, but as unto carnal, as even unto babes in Hamashiach. And Paul is saying here, remember he mentioned in the 2nd chapter how he spoke to them plainly when he was with them, not with any eloquent words and big speeches, okay, but just plain. But with those that were more mature in the faith, he would speak to them, of more spiritual and weightier things. So here, as he says, I can't speak onto you as onto spiritual, meaning like the actual deeper spiritual aspects of the gospel, right, or of the teachings. He couldn't yet speak to them, concerning that, because they were still on a low level, right, as he says, but as onto carnal, because they were still doing things that were signs of spiritual immaturity. All right, still being carnal minded. Those examples of divisions amongst them, one saying, I'm of this, Paul's teachings, I'm of Apollo's teachings, like those, along with many other things that were going on in the church of Corinth, showed that they were still carnal minded. They hadn't fully let go of the old man, all right, which the Apostle Paul is mentioning here as well. So let's look at that word carnal. Sarkikos, fleshly, carnal, having the nature of flesh, i.e. under the control of the animal appetites. It says here, governed by mere human nature, not by the Spirit of God. See, and so when Paul wrote to the Thessalonians, he mentioned the traits of the fruits of the Spirit, right? And how there are no laws against those, right? Love, charity, all those things. When you're governed through the Spirit of the Lord, those things flow from you naturally. But when you're not fully under the Spirit of the Lord, that's why I mentioned here, you're governed by mere human nature. And that's when those examples of the carnality that they were showing forth was being reported onto the Apostle Paul. So he says here, even as onto babes in Hamashiach, right, onto beginners, I have fed you with milk, which are the basics, right? In the scriptures, milk and meat are representation of basics. When somebody is a baby, you feed them milk, right? You don't give a newborn baby or a toddler some steak, right, or some tough meat that some of them haven't even teethed yet. So you give them milk, which is sufficient for them. Just like one that is newly come into the faith, they learn the basics of the faith, of the scriptures, of the gospel. So as he says here, I fed you with milk, which is likened unto being taught with the basics, and not with meat, with the more deeper aspects of the knowledge. For hitherto, meaning up until now, you were not able to bear it. So you weren't spiritually mature enough to handle that. Neither yet are ye able. And he's saying, like, you're still showing me that even up until now, you still haven't matured spiritually. You're still not able to bear the more the heavier parts of the scriptures. You're still on the basics. You're still having trouble getting the basics down. For ye are yet carnal, as we read above, being governed by the human nature and not by the Spirit of God. And he gives examples as to why he says that. For whereas there is among you envying and strife and divisions, right, going back and forth with each other, trying to prove that one is better than another, being divided, are ye not carnal and walk as men? These are all things that people that are not governed by the Spirit of the Lord would show forth. For while one saith, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos. Now remember, when Paul he founded the church, right? He established the church on his his second missionary journey. But remember that when he returned, we went to Ephesus and then he came back to Jerusalem. Apollos went to Ephesus, and then from there he went to Achaia, right? And he basically came in and taught the churches here as well, then in Corinth as well. So they knew who Apollos was. But Paul is saying here, some of you are saying like, oh, I'm of Paul, right? I'm a follower of Paul. Some are saying, hey, I'm a follower of Apollos. But Paul is saying here, that's the mindset of carnality, as though this is like a sect, or a faction kind of thing. We're both servants of the Lord. So as he's saying, are ye not yet carnal, or are ye not carnal? Who then is Paul, and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom ye believed? Who are we really? At the end of the day, we're just servants who taught you the word, even as the Lord gave to every man. So we taught you by the responsibility that was given to us by the Lord. That's all it is. We're not we're not some great men that need to be lauded. I have planted, right? Because he set up the church. Apollos watered, because he came afterwards and taught them and nurtured them. But the Most High gave the increase. So then neither is it he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. So as Paul is saying, it's not, I didn't give you the increase. I don't increase you. Apollos didn't increase you. The Most High does. So I'm not really anything special. Neither is Apollos. We're just a part of the Lord's work at the end of the day. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. Right? So he's saying here, whoever established, whoever planted, whoever watered, at the end of the day, we're all still doing one job. Right? And everybody is still going to get a reward for the work that they have done. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. So if you are likened unto God's field or his vineyard, right, or his farm, then we are likened unto the husbandmen or the workers in God's field. And if it's plowing, I'm plowing, he's plowing. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're doing the same job the Lord has appointed us to do. And ye are God's building. And if you are God's building, then we are likened unto builders. Verse 10, according to the grace of God, which is given unto me as a wise master builder. And that's him likening his position in teaching the gospel. If teaching the gospel or preaching the word to the Lord's sheep was likened unto building a building, then he would be likened unto a master builder. I have laid the foundation. And how did and who did Paul lay the foundation? In Yahushua. So how did he do that? By, if you liken an actual foundation of a building being laid with the cornerstone and everything you need to do to set it up, that's what Paul did when he came there. He first taught them. He laid that foundation, and another buildeth thereon. So anybody else that teaches or builds is building on top of that foundation that I have laid, which is starting with the gospel of Yahushua, the preaching of the cross. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereupon. So be careful how you build upon this foundation. So if you come here onto this foundation of Yahushua, but you're not building correctly, then your building is not going to last. Okay? You have to build according, for example, if let's say there's a certain square feet where, the pillars have been set up and everything, and then you step out like 20 feet to the right of that, and then you start building over there. What the hell are you doing? If you come here, you have to build according to the design that's given. Don't just come out here and try to, do something completely different. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Yahushua HaMashiach. See? So the foundation that was laid, that the Apostle Paul laid, is Yahushua. If you're going to build, you have to build from there, upon that. Now, if any build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble. And these are different quality of works. The idea of building and builders here is likened on to going out, teaching and preaching the word of the Lord, right? And exhorting, establishing the believers, right? These the quality in which you do that labor is likened on to what kind of material you're using to build. Okay? Every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And that's the trying of your work. So there's going to come a point in time when the Lord is, and this is like another example of the Lord's parable that he gave, right? About he gave some about talents, right? That were given to the servants. And then there was a time when the master came back, and you had some that were given 10, right? And then they went and got another 10. Some were given 5. They went and got 5. And then one that was given 1 didn't go and bring anything, right? So at the point where your works are going to be tried, or it's going to be required of you, what kind of work you have done, what labor have you done, how have you built upon this foundation, then it's going to be put to the test, right? Because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. So when the one who commissioned us to come and build here on this foundation, being Yahushai, comes to check our work, of what quality will your work be? If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. So if you teach, right, as likened unto a builder, like Paul mentioned, he established different churches, right? He taught to the different believers. And so there are going to be times when you preach in a certain area, you teach certain people, they hear the word, they come in, they're strong, like the church of Thessalonica, right? As he spoke about their faith and their good works, they would be likened unto gold, right? And so when you build, you're going to have fruit that come in, and they're going to be likened unto gold. They're going to be sure, they're going to be steady, they're going to be on point. But then there are others that, you're going to teach, and they're going to come in and they're going to be like stubble, or they're going to be like hay, and they might not last. But, right, verse 14, as it says, if any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Right? Because as a builder, you've still done the work of building, okay, but you might suffer loss because the labor you've put in. Remember, the Apostle Paul stressed about this all the time. That's why he mentioned even to the Galatians, right, that he is afraid of them, in the sense that he fears for them lest his work would have been in vain. That would have been an example of him suffering loss, spending so much time over there, setting them up, establishing them, putting in work, building, all for them to not, to have their faith subverted and overthrown. That's like suffering loss. But that happens, and in that case, you'll still be saved as a builder, because you still went and did the building. Right? You still went and built upon this foundation and did the work, but your fruit did not remain. Or maybe not all of them. Verse 16, know ye not that ye are the temple of God? See, because if we are the builders and we're building you up, then you are likened unto the temple of God. Remember, he mentioned a couple verses above, you are God's building, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. If any man defile the temple of God, he shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. So Paul is mentioning here, be careful, because defiling your temple, it goes beyond just defiling your actual physical body. Because you can defile your body by what you put in it. But as Yahushua stressed, what did he say? It's not what goeth into a man, but what cometh out of him that defiles the man. So you have, and he said, because those things proceed from the mind. Adultery, wickedness, theft, murder, all of those things he listed, and they defile the man. So if you are likened unto a temple, you got to be careful how you move and the things you do, because they can also defile your temple. And if you defile that temple, well, Paul just mentioned what will happen to you. Verse 18, let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool that he may be wise. So remember that the background in which some of the believers would have been coming from, with the environment they were in, some might have been big, philosophers, some big time, some good speakers, some from different all walks of life. But coming into this knowledge, you may have been wise in the world, you may have had some form of renown, but the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High. You need to become a fool, meaning you need to humble down. Don't come in thinking you're thinking yourself to be someone because you had knowledge in the world. You need to become likened unto one that is a fool, that is one that is without willing to learn, so that you can become wise. Because if you come in the truth thinking you're a know-it-all and you really don't know anything, how can you be taught if you already think you know it all? Verse 19, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. See? For it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness. Meaning that in your own cleverness, right? You think you're clever, and yet the Lord can still ensnare you with your own so-called cleverness. You think you're so wise, and that the Lord can still catch you in a trap. And again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. He's talking about those that are wise in this world. Because all your wisdom really amounts to is vanity, if it's not the wisdom of the Lord, because it's not going to hold. Look, you've had people in the past that were super, super, super smart, ancient, philosophers, scholars. A lot of the things they knew that pertain to their time, some of them are irrelevant now. They may have been lauded and praised in their time, but it amounted to nothing. It was vain. It didn't last. But guess what? The wisdom of the men of old, we still read and use today concerning the scriptures. The things that were written aforetime, guess what? We still use that today. Those are not in vain, because those were the wisdom of God, not the wisdom of the world. The wisdom of the world, like the wisdom of this time, can pertain to this time. But in the future, is no guarantee that the wisdom of how things were done now is what's going to be used then, or in that time. Verse 21, therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours. See, so Paul brings it back full circle to say, at the end of the day, don't glory in men. Don't praise men as though like, oh, Paul is I'm glad I was taught by Paul. I was here when he founded a church, and I said, no, it's not about that. Right? Because we have nothing to be glorified in. And at the end of the day, all things are yours, right? The whatever you may have learned from a particular man, it was given to you to receive. And the Lord could have used anybody to teach that to you, because it was ultimately yours to receive in the first place. Whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come, all are yours. Because at the end of the day, we will inherit it all. And Paul, Apollos, Cephas, these are servants of the Lord, used to bring us into that knowledge of the Lord, to gain us salvation. And in that salvation, we will gain the world and everything in it. We'll have power over life and death. We'll gain the things that we may have lost in this present time, and all the things that are to come in the future. All that will be given to us anyway. And ye are Hamashiachs, right? We belong to Yahushua. Yahushua said that. He said that all that are thine are mine. All that belong to the Father, he gave to Yahushua. And Hamashiach is God's, right? The Lord, Yahushua belongs to the Father. We belong to Yahushua. So all in all, we belong to the Most High. And that brings us to the end of the book of 1 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rachak Wadash. Until next time, Shalom.